So I played this video here because Asad Umar is here being representative of Islamabad, and this is something extremely important for us here. Now, you all know Asad Saab, and I won't go into his professional biodata. What is important for me to convey to you is that he has been a true friend of Open Islamabad from the very start. About 3 years ago, when he came to Islamabad, we had those discussions that Islamabad can practically be a knowledge city. It cannot be a manufacturing hub, it cannot be an agriculture hub, it cannot be an industrial hub. If it has to be anything other than just a government base, it has to be a knowledge city. And that's essentially one of the starting points of Open Islamabad as well. And he has been great at helping us connecting to the right audience. He has been a speaker at Open, and whenever we go out to him, for whatever help we need, he has been very, very forthcoming. So without wasting further time, may I request Mr. Asad Umar, please.
Sorry about distracted से फुरकान कुरैशी सिटिंग है ये बहुत जालिम इंसान है I was watching Imran Khan bat Gaddafi में against West Indies and on his way to scoring his first century and he came to our house मेरे भाई बड़े भाई के दोस्त grabbed me by the hand and said I gave a test so इस किस्म की ज़रूर कर चुके हैं आवाज़ कम है नाश्ता कम है I'll try and speak up. अच्छा जी, couple of things before I go to my topic, but I can't help but be using my political cap as well. And one thing just hit me, Athar Imran introduced me as representative of Islamabad. I don't know why they use that word. Because the way the constitution is structured right now, the way the powers are delineated, an MNA has got zero powers, not close to zero powers to do anything about his own city. Zero budgets, zero people reporting to you, zero authority to take a decision. You're only supposed to legislate, which is generally about the nation rather than a particular city. But more importantly, the thing I wanted to discuss was कि ये आपने बड़ा अच्छा काम किया, आपने मास्टर योग को यहाँ पे बुलाया, आपने रिसर्च मैनेज किया, ये बड़ी अच्छी बात है। और आपने ये कहा कि उम्मीद आप ये करते हैं कि और लोग भी जैसे हों, और मेरा आपसे सख्त इख्तिलाफ है इस बात पे। ये पाकिस्तान का बुनियादी मसला है। मास्टर योग को ये काम करने की जरूरत क्यों पड़े, जो जिम्मेदारी रियासत की है? कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का आर्टिकल 25A से स्टेट्स ये जिम्मेदारी है रियासत की तालीम फराहम करना। और आपको पता है इस्लामाबाद के अंदर कैपिटल सिटी पाकिस्तान की निस्बतन गुर्बत यहाँ पर नहीं आपको नजर आती। 45 से 65,000 के दरमियान, like everything in Pakistan data is unreliable, so there is a range anywhere between 45 to 65,000 students or kids in Islamabad जो स्कूल में engaged के हैं और वो स्कूल में। That's not just a matter of shame, it's a national tragedy that we are in this situation. Anyway, आपकी choice है, आप elect करते हैं अच्छे लोग जो पाकिस्तान की तरक्की की राह पर तेजी से गामजन किए हुए। Now coming to the topic at hand, and that is innovation and risk taking. मैं आज से कोई 7-8 साल पहले इंग्रो में we were having this discussion कि हमारी कोर वैल्यूज जो है वो हमने इंटेक्ट की थी एक्सॉन के ज़माने से। Some of you may know, but we used to be a subsidiary of Exxon, and then management-led buyout took place in 1991. अब वो बन गया। So वो जो core values थी Exxon की वही core values हमने inherit की हैं. We kept moving with that and I somehow never felt comfortable with that. So we decided we're going to revisit our core values. Core values जब revisit की तो हमने उसके बाद जो core values finalize की उसमें 5 core values हमने finalize की. उसमें दो तो वो थी जिनको हम कहते थे golden core values. अगर इंग्रो में कोई is there by any chance anybody here who's worked in इंग्रो? अगर किसी ने इंग्रो में साल भी काम कर लिया ना तो उसको ये दो core values तो कभी भूल ही नहीं सकती. They're so integral to the way the organization functions. Or one is ethics and integrity. As I used to say, इंग्रो में losing your job, the easiest way to do it is to violate either the ethics and integrity की core value या safety, health and environment. These are absolutely central to the way the organization is built. But then number one on our list was innovation and risk taking. लेकिन core value को सिर्फ core value बना देने से तो वो genuine actual core of the values में नहीं आ जाता. सिर्फ कागज पे लिखने से तो नहीं आता. You have to practice it, you have to believe in it, you have to live it, you have to appraise it, you have to reward it, you have to punish it. And only then it becomes a core value. So जो हमारी innovation and risk taking की core value थी, उसके 3 जो key element थे. And why this is important, अथर मुझसे बात कर रहे थे कि usually a startup will be built around a great idea and a great entrepreneur. But the ones which become successful over the long run, just so Jim Collins says, which are built to last, are the ones which are then able to institutionalize themselves. And therefore, obviously, becoming institutionalized is a critical part of long-term success. But there are debits which come with institutionalization. And one of the pitfalls is that the company will tend to become less innovative and will become more risk averse as it becomes more rule bound, more hierarchical. So in the organization structure, I'm sorry, it's placed in the wrong place. It keeps coming in my way. And I did not mean that in a bad way at all, Asad, please. Acha. So therefore, the balance that you have to strive for, what you have to work towards and what you have to strive for, is कि हमने institutionalize भी करना है, and therefore we need हमारे operating processes के अंदर एक systematization भी आएगी, एक standard operating procedures भी बनेंगे, our ability to execute day-to-day work on a consistent basis with minimum of errors वो भी होंगे, हमें Six Sigma का program भी run करना है, हमें waste भी eliminate करना है, and obviously in order to run an organization of this nature हमें एक hierarchy भी create करना है. But at the same time, what you want is that you don't want to lose what made you successful in the first place. And what made you successful in the first place was that you came up with some great idea or ideas and you were willing to take risks. That's why you became successful. So that's the challenge, and therefore this need to have the core value of innovation and risk taking so primary in your thinking. So 3 elements is what I would break it down into. How did we make it operational? The first one was to encourage challenging the status quo. And obviously there are some more visible examples of it, some which are at the surface and some which go in deeper. So surface के ऊपर तो मुझे अभी तक याद है कि पहला corporate plan present हो रहा. This was 1985. So I either turned 24 or I was still 23 years old. And Hassan Imam Kazmi, the CEO of the company, unko presentation kar rahe. Hassan Kazmi was a legendary CEO. I just met him 2 दिन पहले. He was the first Pakistani to get a 6-figure salary on a monthly basis. 1981, a large phenomenal amount of money.
But what made him famous was not just the salary he drew, but the fact that he laid off 27% of the management workforce of the company within 6 months of taking over. So here is obviously somebody who evokes a healthy amount of fear in the room when he walks in. So मेरे presentation कर रहा business analyst 3 नया IBA से graduate किया, उसे 1 साल पहले graduate किया था, and so he had this उसमें depreciation schedule बना. Anybody with finance accounting background से anybody is familiar with depreciation schedules? एक है बेचारा वो डरते डरते शर्मिंदा है, शर्मिंदगी की बात है that one studied accounting. तो उन्होंने ये हाथ खड़ा किया, आपको bravery के 2 नंबर जरूर मिलेंगे. So depreciation schedule लंबा था, so the rest of the presentation was vertical and this one page I put in horizontally, and you see क्या है, what is this nonsense, and some pages are vertical and some are horizontal. ऐसे क्या problem क्या, उसको उठा के ऐसे कर दे, you can't turn the page around. And my CFO was sitting next to me, grabbed me by the thigh and squeezes me hard. सब बहुत नाराज हैं. I said तो so but that organization. And at the end of the year, I still got fantastic ratings and everything. So obviously, this was an organization which didn't have a problem with people, even with very young people, challenging the status quo. From there to questioning the very paradigm by which the company is run, and still being accepted for that is something that became a part of the culture. And so much so, just to tell you another example, anecdotal example of how you operationalize that. By this time I was strategic planning manager. We were a part of my post-ranking system, so manufacturing, marketing, and then the other divisions were all lumped into one. So I was a part of this third pool, and the manager had to come and present in the appraisal meeting at the end of the year. The people who reported to you की appraisal ranking किस उसके level पे होनी चाहिए. And there was a young boy who had been working with me just a year, Rizwan Khalil Sheikh, and I proposed that he should be the number 1 rated person in that division. And Parvez Gyas, who is the CEO of Indus Motors now, or PG as we know him better. PG said कि हमें जो है, Asad, tell us a little bit more about it. We've never really even seen him. What's so special about him? And I still remember my answer. I said, I'll tell you, PG, what's so special about him. He looks Asad Umar in the eye, first year on the job, and he says, you're wrong. That's what's special about him. So this was an organization in which challenging the status quo, and I don't necessarily mean in terms of these personal examples that I've given, but also in what processes to use, what products to produce, what business strategies to pursue, was something which became almost mandatory. If you had to be a top-rated performer, then one of the mandatory requirements from you was that you will be willing to challenge the status quo. And obviously, then get rewarded for it. Second element was an organizational environment for idea generation. Achha, this is a bit tricky. You need organizational solutions for this because, as I said, आपका manufacturing division जिसने एक product produce करनी है, let's say जो एक cell phone के अंदर एक gadget है which is going to become a part of that cell phone, so your ability to produce that in millions without any variation is obviously key to success. So obviously this is not an environment where it makes sense or where it is value creating for you to allow people to think independently all the time. Because if you do that, then you're going to run into problems. You cannot allow in a situation of war somebody standing there and saying, yeah, my battalion commander has said कि इस hill को attack करना है, लेकिन मेरे ख्याल में उस hill को attack करना would be a better idea. That would be suicide, right? So not all organizational structures are conducive to breakthrough innovative thinking. So what you do in an environment like that is that you allow for insulated environments to be created within an organization. And that is one reason why in Anglo, when we went into this growth, hyper growth and diversification mode, we created different companies for each one of these businesses. And even before it reached the stage of that company, there was this strategic planning group which was created, just I mentioned that I was the manager of that. And we were even physically separated from the rest of the organization. So the rest of the organization used to be on 8th, 9th and 10th floor of the building, and we were placed on the 15th floor, away from everybody else. And the whole idea was that everything about that department is going to function differently. So the dress code did not apply to us. That was the first department in the company that dress code didn't apply to us. We did not have lunch with the rest of the boys or the girls. And the whole idea was that make this into something akin to an innovation lab. Because that's what you were supposed to do. You did not have operational parameters that you had to meet. You did not have to produce products or sell products by the end of the day or the end of the month. You had to think, create, and come up with strategic ideas which would generate new businesses. So that is the other structural element that we used, and this is not necessarily the only way of doing it. I'm just sharing with you what we did, of creating these insulated environment within the overall environment of the company. So in other words, you've been running a business, you're 10, 12 years into that business, you've been successful and you've institutionalized it, and now what you're doing is you're trying to create another situation which replicates where you were on day one or maybe even day -1, and shielding it from what is being used to run this company which is 12 years old. So that's another aspect of it which we use and which was very successful. The third and perhaps the most important element, and this is the last thing, and then if you have any questions, I'll take those, was the appreciation for well thought out risk taking. And I use that word carefully. Well thought out risk taking. इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि आप recklessly जो है आप शायद अफरीदी की तरह बैटिंग करना शुरू कर रहे हैं. But Ricky Ponting भी risk लेता था. But it was well thought out risk taking. Yeah, I got you 5 minutes. That's and what does that take? One is saying कि ठीक है जी आप risk लें, बड़ी अच्छी बात है. The other is to then be able to actually live with the consequences of that risk taking. Because what is fundamental in your ability to create an organizational culture which supports risk taking is to be tolerant of failure. And sometimes even celebrate failure. ये बड़ा आसान है कहना कि हाँ बिल्कुल रिस्क है, बड़ी अच्छी बात है, हमें तो बड़ा ही पसंद है कि रिस्क टेकिंग की जाए, और and we support that culture and you do all kinds of nice cultural programs and give lectures. But when failure happens, you go around looking for a scab. कि अब मैं किसको डालूं? And that is the most difficult part and perhaps the most critical part of creating an innovation culture. And again, to give you a personal example of it, जो पहली बड़ी diversification हुई एंग्रो की, उसका as a part of that, and जो दूसरी बड़ी diversification हुई, and that the first one was a very successful one. The second one was led by me, and I became the CEO of that company also. And we started the first year, and it was an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. पहले तो कोई 4 महीने हम product ही नहीं बेच सके. Then we ran into manufacturing problems, and at the end of the year, we had a loss of 360 million rupees after tax, which in 1999-2000 was a lot of money. That's like a few billion rupees now. And this was a company which was not used to losing money. It was a company which was used to actually making a lot of money. And here I was, who had led this thing, and I had been made the CEO of this multinational joint venture with the Japanese at the age of 36. So the natural thing now, in an organization, this was in a way the litmus test, and this was going to determine where Agro was going to go in the future. So the natural reaction to this should have been, we made a mistake. We put in too young a guy to lead this thing. It was too big. He's a good guy. I'm sure he tried his best. But really, it's obviously, it was beyond. So obviously, this is not an environment where it makes sense or where it is value creating for you to allow people to think independently all the time. Because if you do that, then you're going to run into problems. You cannot allow, in a situation of war, somebody standing there and saying, yeah, my battalion commander has said कि इस hill को attack करना है, लेकिन मेरे ख्याल में उस hill को attack करना would be a better idea. That would be suicide, right? So not all organizational structures are conducive to breakthrough innovative thinking. So what you do in an environment like that is that you allow for
insulated environments to be created within an organization.
Well, thank you very much for that talk. One of the core values that we train our children from very early is that East is all about humility. It's a core human value that we teach our children very early in life. West, of course, doesn't do that. How difficult do you think it is for a Pakistani young man or woman brought up with all the flair that we give to this concept of humility, growing up into an executive and at the age of 24 looking straight into the eyes of somebody who's the chief executive and saying you're wrong? And the second part of my question is that you need to be bloody good first. You know, if we just tell people that you can stand up and argue with anybody, and we do not emphasize the importance and significance of being brilliant first, excellent in terms of your own caliber, before you stand up and look into somebody's eyes and say you're wrong. So to actually bring it up as a value rather than as something of a power that you earn through your brilliance, what's different?
देखिए पहले वाला जो है humility to critic absolutely is a part of our core values, and I think it is a fantastic value to have. I think our culture is enriched by that value, और वो हम कितनी strongly उसमें believe करते हैं उसका मैं best example है जानशेर खान. जानशेर खान won more world championships than any other squash player in history, and Pakistanis just never won them. And I'm convinced to this day that the reason that happened was कि वो 19 साल का था, and one day he stood up and he announced कि मैं 6 महीने के अंदर जहांगीर खान को हराऊंगा. And Jahangir obviously was loved by the nation, and what the country never forgave him for is he actually beat him in 6 months. Okay? So humility तो मेरे ख्याल में बहुत prized value है, but humility और self confidence and speaking the truth का आपस में कोई conflict नहीं है. अगर आप खड़े होकर ये कहते हैं कि मैं बहुत होशियार हूं और बाकी होशियार नहीं है, तो I personally don't think it's a very nice thing to say, and I don't think in a Pakistani society you will be appreciated for that. लेकिन सच बोलने के लिए कोई इंसान अगर खड़ा हो तो that is a value that the society does appreciate. When it comes to business context, obviously such की connotation now is different. Now such means that you've done your homework, that you have your facts right, and that is why you're able to take a position. And while I told you Rizwan Khalil Sheikh की मैंने आपको example दी, I found out later, मुझे नहीं पता था पहले कि मुझे अगर presentation करनी होती थी तो boys or girls will stay up till 4 or 5 in the morning preparing कैसे लोगों को presentation करनी है, because they'll get grilled absolutely. So you're absolutely right. You earn this right. Is one way of looking at it. मेरे ख्याल में ये आपकी obligation है that you must always stand for the facts. But the requirement for that is that you must have done your homework. उसमें अगर मेरे आपसे अल्फाज का चुनाव थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट है, उसमें ब्रिलियंट होने की जरूरत नहीं है. बट हाँ, अपना होमवर्क किया हो, आपने काम किया हो, you should know what facts you're talking about. And only then you will be appreciated for standing up. Otherwise, आप ऐसे टाइम ज़ाया करेंगे.
We probably have one. Should go if we take it from this side.
Starting, sir, I'm a student of engineering and doing my undergrad studies. Sir, what I want to discuss is about the student life, about your motivation. You had success, you are a great success over Anglo, and you had proceeded from very starting to 3,000. I had read that you had first pay of 3,000 and you ended at 70 lakh.
नहीं यार 200 रुपए की डंडी नहीं मारा, 3,200 मिले.
So sir, मैं एक किताब में पढ़ रहा था, वहाँ पे कोर वैल्यू बताई जा रही थी कि तमाम सक्सेसफुल पीपल हैं उनके लिए वेल्थ इंपॉर्टेंट होती है, लेकिन वी आर टर्न आउट कि यार पैशन इंपॉर्टेंट होता है. वी आर कंफ्यूज. यू हैव अ वेरी साउंड बैकग्राउंड इन दैट रिगार्ड. सो व्हाट इज द कोर वैल्यू यू हैव फाइंड आउट? व्हाट इज द रियल मोटिवेशन बिहाइंड यू टू द ग्रेट डेस्टिनेशन?
सबसे पहले तो एक काम करो ना, जिस किताब में तुमने ये पढ़ा है कि सक्सेसफुल लोग जो हैं उनके लिए वेल्थ इंपॉर्टेंट होती है, घर जाके उस किताब को तो चलाओ. कोई इंतहाई गधा आदमी मैं कभी कभी साइन करता हूँ ऑटोग्राफ, so you know what I sign? Live your passion. Passion drives this world. लाजिम दिल के पास रहे पासबान अकुल, लेकिन कभी कभी इसे तन्हा भी छोड़ दे, ठीक है? It's passion that drives the world. And even more appropriate here, अक्ल की जिद्दोजहद से हल हो, this is absolutely relevant for what you're asking. अक्ल की जिद्दोजहद से हल हो, ज़ीस का उम्दा मुश्किल है. That your mind will be able to solve the mystery of life is unlikely. पर ये बहुत आसान भी है, अगर इश्क करम फरमाए तो. Find what you're passionate about, and nobody else can tell you that. It is different for every single person. Find what you're passionate about, right? And if you are that rare species of humanity, one or two names come to my mind, जिनका वाकई passion पैसा बनाना है, the rest of us are actually, believe me, are not passionate about making money. The people who make the most money, the people who are the most successful. पाकिस्तान की क्रिकेट टीम जो है, उसमें अगर आप खेले जाके तो आप करोड़ों रुपए कमा लेंगे ना, right? आपके ख्याल में दो बच्चे हैं, मैं अगर आपको ले जाऊं भी महल्ले के अंदर कहीं G8 के ग्राउंड में आपको ले जाता हूँ, और वहां पे दो बच्चे जो हैं 8 साल के दोनों प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं, और एक से आप पूछें कि आप क्यों क्रिकेट खेलना चाहते हो, और वो बोले क्योंकि मुझे सुना है इसमें करोड़ों बनते हैं, और दूसरा बच्चा बोले कि मैंने इसलिए खेलना है कि मैंने ग्रीन ब्लेजर पहनना है और मैंने मियादाद की तरह बैटिंग करनी है. आप क्या प्रेडिक्ट करेंगे इन दोनों में से सक्सेसफुल होने के चांसेस ज्यादा किसके? It's always the guy with a vision, with a passion, who is driven to do something which goes beyond the personal self. Biggest achievements will always come to those people.
We take one more question. Do you have anybody from this way? Any questions? Yeah, so we'll just, so that we've covered all of them. Just wait for the mic.
My name is Mohammed Masood. Since I belong to a very small organization, my question is in terms of innovation. So you talked about incorporating an innovation cell and innovation in an organization. My question would be, with small organizations, we don't exactly have the time, resources, or the budget to incorporate these sort of things. So would you suggest the same strategy to cultivate innovation, or would you go about something that we like get somewhere in 30 years like NACA have and then incorporate that culture of innovation?
मैं तो आपको ये कह रहा था कि आप तो सक्सेसफुल हो ही नहीं सकते अगर आप इनोवेट ना करें डे वन को, ठीक है ना? कोई मार्केट में गैप था in terms of product availability or service availability or the way it is being delivered or the price at which it is being delivered or the point where it is being delivered. There was some gap in the market which you have filled and that's why you become successful. Okay? So वो इनोवेशन तो आपने की थी, ये नहीं है कि मैं अभी तो इनोवेशन नहीं करूंगा, मैं 13 साल के बाद इनोवेशन करना शुरू हुआ, ऐसे नहीं होगा. आपने इनोवेशन की थी तो आप सक्सेसफुल हुए थे. My point was that after that, all companies, without exception, those which want to then streamline and become successful over the long run, will have to do some kind of institutionalization. And once that is done, once your bread and butter is operational, so to say, तो उसके बाद अगर अब आप लॉन्ग टर्म वैल्यू क्रिएशन करना चाहते हैं तो आपको इनोवेशन और रिस्क टेकिंग फिर भी जारी रखनी पड़ेगी. और उसको करने के लिए व्हाट आई वाज सजेस्टिंग वाज द सेग्रीगेशन, एंड इट डजंट नेसेसरली हैव टू बी कि कोई 4000 लोगों का एक दफ्तर होगा, पूरा ऑरेकल टावर होगा, वहां पे इनोवेशन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन होगी. इट कुड बी लिटरली, यू नो, इवन इन अ बिग कंपनी लाइक एग्रो, the strategic planning work initially was started by one person being assigned to it, that was myself, and then it grew into a department, and then obviously it turned into different businesses. So don't think of it necessarily कि बहुत बड़ा कोई organization होगी. It's just कि जिसकी job है, जिसका काम है, उसने sales deliver करनी है. That's another thing you have to remember. Operational task versus planning task. Operational task will always win because the deadline is more finite, it is more immediate. It is now. You have to complete your sales target by the end of the month. You have to complete your production target by the end of the month. You have to issue your monthly accounting statement by a certain date. So those will always take precedence, and the creative work, the planning work will always take a back seat. So therefore, if you want to do it successfully, you have to segregate it.
Thank you very much.